Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Jessica Devereaux in Baltimore. 30,000 Chinese workers have been on strike for 2 weeks against the world's largest maker of athletic shoes. They make sneakers for companies that you know of course, like Nike and Adidas. And workers have shut down production, and the company Yuan stock price has sharply declined. The workers allege the company has failed to adequately fund Social Security pensions and contribute to housing funds. Joining us to discuss this strike are our two guests. Michelle Chen is a contributor to The Nation and In These Times and an editor at Culture Strike. And we have joining us from China is Xiaoming Chai. He works at Peking University and he's an instructor for the Further Education Project. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
So Michelle, let's start off with you. The Yuan strike is estimated to be one of the largest in decades. Can you tell us why so many workers are striking and what are their demands?
The workers basically just want the company to make good on their obligations under Chinese law to pay social insurance costs. Many of these workers say they are owed a lot of overdue payments on the part of the company for basic things like pension funds, unemployment insurance, basic social welfare protections that are laid out in Chinese law under the newly reformed labor laws. This is certainly not the only instance in which a company has shirked on its obligations to pay. These violations of the social insurance cost payment laws are routine throughout the workforce, but these workers feel like it has reached such a crisis point that they are willing to go into the streets. Another big issue is that there are, in addition, contributions to the housing fund that they're owed. And with the rising cost of living, many of these workers are suffering from these really burdensome housing costs that they cannot keep up with, and their wages, unfortunately, are not rising as much as they should be to keep up with the cost of living. So now we have tens of thousands of workers. I believe at its peak, it was over 30,000 workers marching in the streets, undertaking a work stoppage, protesting, and also many of them were just not going to work. They were supposedly swiping their cards and just, not working. So they're resisting in a variety of ways, and the Western companies have simply been caught off guard, and it's made some waves because it's very unusual for a country with supposedly no independent, labor unions where labor activity is really suppressed for workers to be taking action like this.
Yeah, you mentioned it's unusual, but the Chinese civil think tank, Institute of Contemporary Observation, says that there have been 30 strikes involving at least 50 workers since March. So it seems like there's an uptick. And I want to turn to Xiaoming and get your point of view. Are we actually seeing an uptick here?
Sorry, and actually, I think this is the first time for years we got this kind of so huge scale strike, even in Canton. So there have been the often strikes from the different factories, even from some big brand names like the IBM and Nokia, and also until now the strike lasts over 2 weeks from the 5th of April to now. I think it's quite dramatic, and also workers are quite confident with their activities.
Can you tell us? I want to get a sense of, do workers actually usually win in the end? What's the likelihood that we'll actually see the company agree to these terms?
Okay, I will say now it's still what they call in English it's a seesaw war, and we heard quite many things like the dozens works has been integrated, questioned by the local authority, even arrested. Some activists like the Zhang Ziru, they has been detained or the house arrested by the local policeman or the local government. But work still keep the high confidence. And because 2 hours ago, I was in this kind of the instant social message group with workers, one of the largest with the workers, and the 400, 300 workers, they are discussing their planning, their feedback about today and the 3 days feeding. So workers still are planning to last the strike until the May Day. They say if they cannot get their demands, they will not give up. So it's quite militant. It's quite confident. Yes.
Okay.
I'd just like to add also in a lot of these instances, when you do see workers going on strike, in the end, it does end with some kind of negotiation. Often the management will give concessions. It's rare that you'd see like a massive victory, but, frankly, the management often just wants people to go back to work. And often workers know what they want. And when they get what they want, things just continue. I mean, we may not see, huge radical upheaval in the streets anytime soon, but workers do know how to organize and can take very targeted strategic actions when they know, when they have a specific goal in mind.
All right, let's turn and talk about this Guardian report that came out talking about a labor organizer, Zheng Ziru. He basically has been missing for more than 24 hours, and his wife suspects that he has been detained by state security services. Can you tell us about Zheng Ziru's role in organizing the strike, Xiaoming?
And actually, I will not say he is organized because this strike was spontaneous and not well organized, and still the mainly what we call the automatic phenomenon. It's planned, or we can even can say not planned by the workers, but launched by the workers. And Zhang Zhilu he's a quite senior, experienced labor activities in Shenzhen and in Dongguan. Yes, he is quite famous, and he has been involved in the strike probably from the 12th of April, but the strike did start before that. And Zhang want to advise and support the workers and legally and also technically how to run and how to organize the individual groups. And Zhang was detained by the local authority or local policeman, I think not only 24 hours, probably to today, it's already the third day. And his wife still cannot contact him, and also not only himself, and also other individual labor activities also will be also had been integrated by the local authority and the policemen. Yes.
Michelle, is it common for labor organizers to be intimidated or detained?
Yeah, it's common for anyone, doing anything bold politically in China to suffer some kind of intimidation or harassment. It doesn't always wind up with someone actually being detained, but these things are nothing new. The issue with labor activists is, as Xiaoming was saying, this is kind of a spontaneous uprising that's coming from the grassroots. So it's going to be very hard for authorities to contain simply by detaining one guy that they perceive as the leader. Frankly, it doesn't, I'm viewing from afar, but it seems like it can never be just one guy who's leading, tens of thousands of workers. There's got to be something else going on there. So I imagine that this campaign will survive despite the detention. And if anything, hopefully this will open up some more room for dissent and organizing, and for leaders to have a little bit more breathing room, because what they can do as organizers is help to negotiate when it comes down to bringing workers to the table. Ultimately, the government can't keep down 30,000 people, and if there is a representative who is willing to represent their interests on behalf of the entire workforce, then they need those people. They can't just throw them in jail.
All right, Michelle, I'll ask the final question to you. Do you foresee that we'll see a shift from Western multinational companies to start investing and looking to produce elsewhere? Does this signal sort of an end to cheap Chinese labor?
I'm hesitant to say that anything signals the end to cheap Chinese labor, because it has been such a faithful servant to U.S. consumerism for so long. But yes, you do see companies increasingly undertaking capital flight, as it's known. Just as we saw manufacturing jobs being offshored from the U.S., you're seeing companies that used to produce a lot in China sort of slowly shifting a lot of their production facilities to countries with even lower costs of labor, such as Indonesia or Cambodia or Bangladesh, as we see with the recent tragedies that have gone on there. So it is, a race to the bottom that's continuing. But the thing is, Chinese workers have a lot of leverage. 1.2 billion people is not something that even a huge multinational can just walk away from. So if they can use that leverage and use it to advance, political as well as economic justice, that might change China. It might change the manufacturing industry for the better. I just hope Adidas and those other companies will actually start to listen before it's too late.
All right, Michelle Chen as well as Xiaoming Chai, thank you both for joining us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.